8 applicants are shown preparing for a hiring exam for a lucrative corporate position. Before entering the test room, some candidates make minor cosmetic adjustments, while others encourage themselves with words of encouragement. Each candidate's workstation is positioned consistently throughout the dimly illuminated exam room. Cameras are also included to keep an eye on their activities. The 8 of them are sitting when an armed guard enters the room, clearly causing the candidates to become anxious. A man follows him, introducing himself as the invigilator without revealing his name. After expressing regret for the difficulties they have had to get to this point, he informs them that the candidates have advanced to the final round of interviews after passing all prior hiring exams. They will earn the jobs of their dreams if they pass this final exam. The invigilator states that the only law that candidates are expected to abide by is the rule of the test, which states that no federal law applies within the examination hall. They are not permitted to speak with the invigilator or the guard. Likewise, they will be eliminated if they purposefully or unintentionally destroy the paper and leave the room for whatever reason. The candidate will have 80 minutes to complete the test. On the page in front of them, there is just one question that they must respond to. After that, the invigilator asks whether they have any questions. When no one answers, he wishes them luck, starts the timer, and walks out. When the contestants flip their papers over, they discover that they are entirely blank. They all exchange bewildered glances. They become increasingly anxious over time. As a result, candidate number 2 begins to explain on her paper why she believes she is qualified for the position. She ruins her paper, so the guard is instructed to toss her out once the room's camera zooms in on it. As the guard locks the doors behind her, number 2 pleads for another opportunity. After some time, number 5 understands that they are allowed to speak to each other even though the rule states they are not allowed to speak to the guard or the invigilator. He conveys the same message to the others, leading them to assume that they must collaborate to identify the question before they can determine the solution. The group talks about a number of strategies to pass the test, but they are all equally perplexed. Candidate number 1 doesn't say anything during this. When one man tries to explain himself, number 5 advises that they give each other pet names to avoid having to disclose who they really are. Since the first candidate hasn't spoken yet, he continues by naming him Deaf. After that, the girls are given the names blonde, brunette, and dark based on the color of their hair, and the boys are given the names brown, black, and white based on their race. White then advises that since there is no rule that states that they should stand up from their seats. Taking a chance, he stands up. To the delight of all, the guard remains stationary, allowing them to move freely. Dark thinks that a watermark or invisible ink is used to write the questions on paper. Despite their lack of knowledge, they all agree to test the notion. After that, Dark gets up and checks the paper for writing using the room's lights, but there's nothing to see. Because the question might be in just one of them, she nonetheless urges that everyone check their own. With the exception of the Deaf, who remains silent in his seat, everyone follows her instructions. White picks up his paper and examines it under the lamp. Black said the writings might be apparent in X-rays or UV rays when they don't receive any results. After that, the group searches for a switchboard to determine if it has the ability to switch on various types of lights. When they can't find one, they decide to look for the source of the light themselves. Deaf is completely unhelpful and remains anxiously seated. Blonde discovers strips of emergency lights across the room, but because there are no switches, the group must shatter all of the other light bulbs to cause an emergency and activate the lights. Brown retaliates, claiming that they cannot take such a risk, so they vote on it and ultimately decide to go ahead with the idea. After destroying all of the light bulbs, the room suddenly lights blue due to the emergency black light. Everyone except Deaf begins to look for the question in the paper. However, they are dissatisfied again since they are unable to see the question. Brunette requests that everyone remove the first layer of the strip lights because they are not illuminated. This could produce UV rays that can aid them. They use the woman's heels to shatter the strips, revealing another type of light. However, they are once again disappointed when these lights also do not work. The group now has only 60 minutes left. A frustrated White begs everyone to consider options. As they brainstorm ideas, White explains that they can do anything with number 2's work because she is already rejected. So they gather around her desk and attempt to trace the paper with a pencil. Still, no question arises. White then cuts her paper into sections, allowing them to explore with various approaches. He next pees on one of the papers to determine whether it is liquid activated. However, this does not work either. A furious disagreement breaks out between Black and White as they debate their next course of action, but they end it when they hear the Deaf cry. He tears silently in his seat while the others watch him. After that, Deaf begins to ramble on about something. He asks if they can see anything in the paper, claiming that it reflects their image. They disregard his ramblings and resume their discussion of concepts. When Brown talks, everyone becomes completely silent. He advances his own explanation, stating that they are not taking an exam but rather participating in some sort of betting show. The company's board members have placed bets on who would crack under pressure, and their primary purpose in attendance is for entertainment. Dark believes that the board members have better things to do with their time, but Brown claims that money is the least of their problems. Given their wealth, the board members most likely enjoy taking risks. Now, everyone has their own thoughts. Some suspect the invigilator, while others believe the CEO is responsible. They start to fracture under pressure and insult one another. Brunette is convinced that no one is watching them because the CEO is actively involved in the company. He possesses all of the company's rights and authority over everyone. She is clearly more knowledgeable about the company than everyone else. Brown asks how she knows so much about the CEO. Brunette already works in human resources for the company but has never met the CEO. She applied for a higher level position and now she is here. White then admits that he was headhunted and offered the position, but the others claim they applied for it. However, they all have one thing in common. They know nothing about the company or what it does because they were ordered not to ask questions. Brunette then adds that they are applying for a well-known multi-million-dollar pharmaceutical company called Barag. When a pandemic hit the world's youth a few years ago, they were the first to discover a treatment. Their current annual revenue is $20 billion, thanks entirely to their CEO. Suddenly, Black proposes that the corporation may have discovered a solution for the next deadly disease, which is killing millions of people throughout the world. Dark is now intrigued and asks Black for additional information. This makes White suspicious, so he asks Dark if she is also infected with the virus. Dark claims she isn't and rejects the issue. To divert attention away from herself, she approaches the guard and pulls a lighter from his pocket without saying anything. Then she looks at the fire alarm. The group intends to use the lighter to activate the sprinkler because water could damage the words on the paper. Dark climbs a chair but fails to reach the fire alarm. White assists her by giving her a rolled piece of paper, which she lights and uses to activate the alarm. Water soon begins to shower, yet the papers remain unchanged. Suddenly, the guard approaches the group. Dark then unfolds the paper in her palm, discovering that it is her own. White had betrayed her in order to loosen up the competition. As she calls White a bastard, the guard pulls Dark away. Following that, a furious Black threatens to punch White until he lights out. This turns off the lights, and the group realizes that the lights are voice-activated. They advise one another to watch what they say, while Def begins to cry once more. White sits in front of him, and makes the poor guy tear his sheet and eat it. The guard approaches Def and dismisses him as well. Now there are only 5 contestants left. Black calls out White for being a bad person, but White believes they should thank him for removing their competitors. He also pretends to know the question but refuses to tell the others. In a frenzy of wrath, Black knocks him out with one punch. Black then binds White to a chair and covers his mouth with a tie. White eventually regains consciousness. Brunette removes his gag and he requests his medication, explaining that he is also affected with the virus and must take medication every hour in order to survive. Black searches his pocket for tablets but finds none. This leads the group to conclude that White is simply acting in order to be released. However, White claims that one of them has taken the pill and promises to tell them what the question is if they return it. Soon, he loses consciousness and begins to tremble. Some feel he is faking, but Black claims he is having a seizure due to the virus. They begin searching for the medicine he mentioned but cannot find it in the room. With only 15 minutes remaining on the timer, they check each other for the pill. Brunette suspects Brown of taking the pill and turns out to be right when she discovers it sticking to a chewing gum under Brown's table. She attempts to feed it to White, but Brown tosses it into a vent. As the others try to get it out, a stressed-out Brunette approaches the camera and requests the invigilator to save the man, but because she spoke to the invigilator, she is automatically disqualified. After she leaves, Blonde uses a bobby pin to extract the pill and saves White's life. She also unties him in the process. Everyone expects him to provide the solution he promised once he has recovered. White reveals that the answers lie within the candidates themselves. They've been looking for a question for a long time, but White believes there isn't one, and the one left out is the answer. The rest of them believe him, but before they can act, White rushes to seize the gun from the guard. Black throws him aside and takes the revolver himself. He points it at White, saying he took it only to stop him from taking the gun, but White attacks Black and takes the gun from him. However, as he is about to use it, he discovers that the gun has fingerprint recognition, so White uses the guard and points his gun at the others. He threatens them to leave the room on their own so that he can take the post. Brown walks out on his own instead of retaliating because he is afraid of being shot. A nervous Blonde walks slowly to the door but she steps out yelling, Lights out. At the end, the chamber gets completely dark, causing White to shoot in random directions. When the lights come back on, Black collapses on the floor, a bullet hole in his chest. White turns around and notices Blonde still has one foot inside the room. He was considering shooting her as well, but the timer had stopped. Now, White approaches the camera and informs the invigilator that he has won the tournament, but the guard approaches and shows him the time. White is surprised to find that they still have 20 seconds left, which means he is disqualified for speaking with the invigilator. It is then discovered that Def had adjusted the time while they were discussing other topics. Finally, the only one left is Blonde. She enters the room and takes up Def's spectacles, which had fallen while he was being brought out. Using those, she examines the paper and notices, "Question 1, scribbled on it." To her complete astonishment, Def enters the room followed by the invigilator, who reveals that Def is the CEO of the company and was in the test to keep an eye on everyone. Blonde approaches him and replies, "No." The CEO and the invigilator smile, knowing she has answered the question and passed the test. It turns out that the invigilator asked them if they had any questions at the start of the test, which was the only thing they had to respond to. The entire exam was designed to assess the candidates' intelligence and attentiveness. They hire Blonde as the CEO's secretary, but she declines because she does not want to work for a murderous organization. The invigilator explains that Black isn't actually dead. Shocked, Blonde goes to find that Black is still alive and the wound on his chest is healed. The invigilator explains that the bullet that hit him was a capsule that repairs the wound after piercing the body. It is truly an upcoming drug that they have recently developed that can treat any medical condition in the world. Finally, Blonde takes the position, and she accepts the job by shaking hands with the CEO.